And we'll invite up our next speaker, Dr. Rona Jualla van Oudenhoven. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me. Angie, thank you for having me here. Jesse Cofino, thank you very much. I got to experience my Angie True Play story, so I'd just like to share it with you. And yeah, that's it. Thank you, first of all, for the privilege of getting to know so many of you, whether it was through a glance or a handshake or a nod or an interaction. It means a lot, and I hope we continue the collaboration and partnership beyond here. Before I begin, I listed a few points. There are just about 5. I would ask that you indulge me because I will sort of look at the notes because I sort of called a lot of the speakers, and I know if I leave it to memory to remember the name, I won't. So basically, what factors can and ought we consider, with respect to play and global educational change? The first of all, the dialectics of the global and the local. I am from a small island in the Caribbean called Trinidad, and we are so accustomed to having our reality dictated by universalizing principles. We are so used to being othered, and we are very guilty of embracing the imported. So I recognize the pride exuded by Professor Li Jumai and many other Chinese speakers when they owned Angie Play as a phenomenon that is unique and brilliantly theirs and stands out as a model of change that can be conceptually, culturally, and contextually adopted and adapted. And I would like to just say congratulations for that. So point number 2, I did say I'll be very brief. Play as creators of global citizens. It was seen from the clips and from our experiences of play that through play, children can learn to be concerned about issues that are outside of themselves, concerned about the environment and the nature, for example, hence ascribing to a wider worldview and becoming truly global citizens. Play, therefore, as contextual, as global, as breaker of barriers, play as humble inquiry, and yes, Kareem, play as equalizer. Thirdly, play as anti-oppressive. I spend much of my time in anti-oppressive practice, that is sort of reducing the deleterious effects of systemic oppression, trying to create a safe and inclusive space for everyone. So all the time when I was looking at children at play, all I can think about is, well, how can we use play as anti-oppressive practice? Now hear me out on this. Adults, we have spent far too much time suppressing and schooling play out of the lives of children. And this has been one of the largest systemic oppressive practice of our time. The fact that we all gathered here, so profoundly thrilled by the idea that we should let children play freely, speaks volume. Human adults, sometimes I think what foolish creatures we are, that we suppress, oppress, and destroy the very thing that gives meaning to our lives. Not only to have to spend a lifetime trying to recreate it, rediscover it, redefine it, and be awed by it. And I'm not even talking about the environment here, I'm just talking about play. So it's refreshing to see somebody's getting it correct. So Angie Play, I'd just like to say congratulations. Fourth, back to the basic. Play as freedom, yes. Play as human, as basic human right, as a basic right of every child. I sat next to Dominique on day 1 when the video was showing. And she was very emotional. She was moved to tears. And of course, she got me emotional as well. I promise never to sit next to her again, but that's another story. So why the tears? I will tell you, for anyone who has spent a lifetime or a number of years fighting for something that you know ought to be, that should be, that is an injustice not to be, will be moved when you see children at play in such a free space, free environment, when you see them being allowed to express themselves. When you're confronted with it in full bloom, and I think that is the overwhelming factor that we saw. I am Caribbean, I am Canadian. Kareem, I'm not African American. No one can be perfect. But I am Caribbean and Canadian with a history of colonial oppression. We have spent lifetimes having play as culture being wiped off of our curriculum and our existence. So when Kareem spoke of that historical context, It is very real for us, becoming disidentified with the self, groomed into servitude and obedience, structure and order, following imposed laws and regulations. So yes, we have struggled to regain the rights to free expression, the right to agency and independence, and the right to free play, the right to self. As Professor Hua noted, play gives freedom. Play is powerful and play is empowering. So lastly, play as powerful, a model for global educational changes. We have spoken of no play, false play, true play, safe play, risky play, learning through play, and all the time the equity practitioner in me is seeing the power of play. I heard Ms. Cheng and Professor Fenn talk about play as empowering, play as promoting equity, respecting a spectrum of abilities. In the late night session, our Ugandan colleague, Safina, spoke of Angie play allowing for multiple intelligences. Lawrence Cohen came to the podium and spoke of the little boy in the classroom with different pattern of speech, and the teacher's leadership in grabbing that opportunity to teach values of respect for others and how it embraces differences in the classroom. Cass Holman spoke of designing play material that is fluid and open to interpretation, solely dependent on the imagination of the children, not designed in any predetermined image, she said, whether a whale or dolphin. That is a powerful way that we are promoting educational change. Kudos to you, Cass. David Whitebread went so far as to even apologize for the sexist language of Vygotsky as an indication of the times. Thank you, David. So yes, indeed, times have changed. The world is changing, and dare I say progressing. In some parts of the world, it may not quite look that way, but there is hope. So dare I say play as progressive, as a model for global educational change? These are the elements of the global model of play that will shape the lives of our children. And this is the model of play that children will give to us as adults to shape the dynamics of our existence. Before I go, if I may, I would be very interested in hearing from some of you in the audience how Angie strikes a balance with the following, because I'm quite sure that Angie Play does. But for others who are trying to implement the model, there are many lessons to learn. Andrew Ropestoff, I tried to get the rope because I know it's Roopstoff, said it beautifully earlier when he asked, how not to kill that which one studies. Point number one, the scope for privacy in play, the scope and the right for privacy in play. Point number two, the role of safe and unsupervised play. Number three, protection from the reality TV syndrome. Point number four, undocumented play without narratives and meta-narratives. And five, as Professor Yan also noted, when he gave the example of children, why should I play where I don't like to play? So play as play for the sheer heck of it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's so refreshing to hear about play as a context for liberation, for justice and equity. We, in the United States, so often hear about needing to remove play to address equity and social justice, so thank you.